When I first became aware, I understood my place in the family, the spare. My parents never called me by my real name. Instead, they used cold, contemptuous labels like, "A daughter is just that," or "You were born a girl, so go and find a decent husband." This was the label they put on me before I even finished learning the alphabet. My brother, Daniel, was different. He was always celebrated as the prince of the Vale family. He was their pride, future, and worthy heir. The entire family knelt before Daniel's every achievement, while I existed as a mere shadow. I remember one evening when I was 14. Daniel announced that he was accepted into an advanced science program, and the dinner table erupted in applause and congratulations. My father raised his glass, his voice filled with pride. That's what a person who bears the Vale name is like. Outstanding, brave, a genius. Then, he turned to me with his familiar sneer. "As for you, my daughter, at least you know how to cook." That's enough. The whole table burst into laughter. My mother's laughter was softer, the familiar kind that acknowledged the cruelty but went along with it because that was her way of life. I sat silently, my heart constricted. Not because of what he said, but because they never thought I could be anything more than a dutiful daughter. From childhood, I was repeatedly told, "Why should a girl study so much? You'll just get married anyway, and don't compare yourself to your brother. He's the one who will carry on the family business." Daniel knew he was the favorite and never missed an opportunity to remind me of it. I remember when I was 16, I took a part-time job at a small restaurant to buy things for myself. He was in the living room, being praised by our parents, when he threw a sarcastic comment my way. "Don't forget to wash the grease off your hands before you touch the door." The Vale family doesn't employ maids. My parents roared with laughter, as if it were a witty joke. I walked out, pretending not to hear, but every word and every laugh piled up into wounds that would never heal. The only person who saw me differently was my grandfather, Eldon Vale, the founder of the corporation my father was running. He never asked me about grades or fame. He asked me what I thought, what my dreams were, and what made me happy. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch, he said, "Don't mistake their blindness for the truth. You have something Daniel doesn't. One day, when the time comes, you'll understand. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." I didn't fully understand what he meant. I only saw myself as a forgotten daughter, living silently in my brother's shadow, the one who was destined to inherit, while I was forced to be a backdrop. But his words remained anchored in me, like a smoldering fire waiting for the day it would ignite. The day my brother, Daniel, graduated from Harvard, my family treated it like a momentous holiday, more important than any New Year or birthday. My mother bustled around the house, giving instructions to the servants and checking on the flowers and party preparations. My father stood in the grand hall, adjusting his cufflinks, his eyes shining as if he were about to receive a Nobel Prize, when in reality, he was just preparing to announce what everyone already knew. His perfect son would be the heir to the Vale legacy. And me? I was given an old dress, altered from one my mother had bought, to wear just to show up for this important day. My seat was in the last row, far from the stage. From there, I saw Daniel in his graduation gown, walking up to the stage to receive his diploma. The entire auditorium applauded loudly. My parents stood up, clapping until their palms were red, their faces beaming as if lit from within. I clapped too, but my hands felt heavy and my heart ached. After the ceremony, a celebration was held at a luxurious hotel with bright crystal chandeliers, glittering gowns, and luxury cars lined up outside. I tried to shrink into a corner behind a large vase of white lilies. Guests who passed by gave me a casual glance and said, "Oh, that must be the other daughter." That single sentence felt like a small, precise knife wound. Then came the moment I had anticipated, but was still shocked by. My father stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, his voice booming across the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is not only a day to celebrate my son Daniel's outstanding achievement, it is also the day the Vale family affirms its legacy." He turned to Daniel, proud as a king bestowing a sword. "From today, Daniel will not only carry the Vale name forward, but he will also officially inherit this entire estate, the $75 million corporation, the $13 million New York villa, and even the new Tesla outside. Daniel is the future of our family. The room erupted in applause, clinking glasses, and congratulatory laughter. I sat silently in my corner, my chest heavy with a stone. Daniel's eyes swept over me, and he raised his glass with a condescending smile, not to share in the joy, but as if to say, "See? I won. You're just a shadow." I turned away, swallowing the humiliation, as my mother walked past. She didn't forget to leave a cold, blade-like comment behind. "Don't bother your brother on his special day. At least for today, be silent." I bit my lip. I had been silent my whole life. But in that moment, I remembered my grandfather's words. One day, the truth will come. I didn't know when that day would be. I didn't expect it to begin that very night, with a white envelope handed to me by a stranger who walked straight towards me, amidst the crystal lights and celebratory music. The vibrant music played on, glasses were raised to Daniel, the air openly blessed by my father. I sat still, clutching the envelope hidden inside my dress, feeling every beat of my heart against the papers. Two conflicting voices echoed in my head. My father's familiar line, "A daughter should just know her place," and my grandfather's warm voice, "Clara, the truth will set you free." I took a deep breath. I couldn't be silent any longer. I stood up, my legs trembling, but my heart as hard as stone. The guests nearby turned to look, perhaps surprised that the spare daughter dared to leave her seat. I walked step by step toward the stage, where the bright lights and hundreds of eyes were on Daniel. My father saw me, his brows furrowed, the forced smile on his face freezing as I approached. Daniel smirked, thinking I was coming up to congratulate him, to play my usual docile supporting role. My mother slightly shook her head, her eyes a silent order. "Don't cause a scene." I walked up the steps and stood facing my father. He leaned in, gritting his teeth while keeping his voice low, so the crowd couldn't hear. "Clara, get down now. This is not the time for your foolishness." For the first time in my life, I didn't back down. I brought the microphone to my lips, my voice initially shaky but growing stronger as I spoke. "Actually, you're wrong, Dad. This moment belongs to me." The whole room fell silent. The laughter, the congratulations, everything stopped. Hundreds of eyes were on me. Daniel blinked, the mocking smile on his face faltering. I pulled the envelope from my dress and held up the papers. "This is a document signed by my grandfather, Eldon Vale, himself. The entire corporation, the villa, the assets, they have all been transferred to his granddaughter's name. Not Daniel, not Dad, but me." A murmur spread through the room. Guests craned their necks to see, some covering their mouths, others whispering. Daniel let out a harsh laugh, raising his wineglass as if to mock me. "That's enough, Clara. Don't make a fool of yourself. No one would believe a girl like you would be chosen." I opened the folder, my voice clear and loud. "These are notarized transfer documents, and this is a handwritten letter from my grandfather. He wrote clearly that he chose me because I understand humility, because I know what it means to suffer in silence, and because I see people, not just power or profit." My father rushed toward me, his face red with fury. "Nonsense! What can a daughter do besides get married? The old man is too old. He wasn't of sound mind when he signed these things." Just as he was about to snatch the papers from my hand, an old but resonant voice cut him off. "I am of sound mind." The whole room turned. Grandfather Eldon, slowly leaning on his cane, stood up from the front row. He walked onto the stage, each tap of his cane on the floor like a hammer blow. His eyes were sharp and more majestic than the crystal chandeliers above. He placed his hand on my shoulder, his voice distinct. "I am the one who drafted these documents. I had them sent so they would only be given to Clara when the time came. And that time is today. I have watched my two grandchildren since they were young. Daniel, you are intelligent, but arrogant. Victor, you know how to build wealth, but you have lost your humanity. Clara, she was looked down upon just for being a girl, endured so much bitterness, but still did not lose her heart. She is the one I trust with the future." The crowd buzzed with chatter. Guests looked at each other, and many nodded in agreement. Daniel's face turned pale, his wine glass trembling in his hand. My father turned to my grandfather, his voice almost a shout. "Dad, you're ruining everything. I spent my whole life building this to give to Daniel, and you're giving it all to a girl? What can this girl do?" My grandfather replied with a single cold line. "I am giving it to Clara, not because she is a son or a daughter, but because she is the most deserving person." The whispers rose like a wave. I stood still, not feeling afraid for the first time. For the first time, my eyes did not flinch from my brother or my parents. I clutched the folder tightly, knowing that my life would never be the same again from this moment on. The air in the ballroom was stiflingly heavy. The whispers were like a continuous wave. The guests who had just been applauding Daniel now looked at me with surprise, curiosity, and some even began to lean towards my side. Daniel slammed his glass on the table, wine splashing onto the white tablecloth. "No way! My whole life you've just been a spare. A useless daughter dares to compete with me? Clara, you don't deserve this," he growled. I looked straight at him. For the first time in my life, my gaze did not waver. My voice was low and firm. "Maybe you think I don't deserve it, but grandfather trusts me. And the papers in my hand prove it. I don't need your approval." Daniel was speechless. The familiar sneer vanished, replaced by a fear he had never shown before. My father's face was beet red, veins pulsing on his neck as he yelled, "Impossible! A girl can't run the Vale Corporation. I've built this my whole life. I won't let it be destroyed by this craziness." My grandfather leaned on his cane, his voice ringing like a bronze bell. "Victor, you say you built this your whole life? I am the one who built this from nothing. You only inherited it and expanded it. But in expanding it, you lost the foundation, compassion, fairness, and humanity. You let your blind prejudice ruin your own family. And because of that, you are not worthy." My mother, who had been silent until now, turned pale, her makeup unable to hide her trembling. She mumbled, as if to justify herself, "But how can a girl bear the weight of the family business? Clara won't be able to handle the pressure." My grandfather turned to her, his eyes both sad and firm. "Marielle, you are wrong. Precisely because Clara has endured all these years and not given up, she is stronger than everyone else. She knows what it's like to be looked down on, so she will never look down on others. That is what a leader island." The auditorium was filled with scattered applause, which then spread and grew. The applause was no longer for Daniel or Victor, it was for me. My father gritted his teeth, glared at me, and then turned away, striding off the stage. The sound of his shoes on the wooden floor echoed like a gunshot in my chest. My mother silently followed him, her head bowed, not daring to look at anyone. The entire image of the perfect family she had painted was shattered in a single night. Daniel still stood there, his hands clenched so tightly they were white, the wine glass shattered in his grasp, shards of glass clattering to the floor. He growled through clenched teeth, "You don't deserve this. You've stolen everything that was rightfully mine." I looked him straight in the eye, my voice calmer than ever. "No, Daniel. I didn't steal anything. Grandfather chose me. And for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself too. You're afraid because the foundation you've stood on all this time was just an illusion." Daniel froze. His eyes flashed with anger. But hidden beneath it was fear. The fear of losing the glory that was given to him. The fear of facing the truth that he was never the chosen one. My grandfather stepped up beside me, hitting his cane on the floor with a firm tap. "From today, the Vale Corporation has a new heir. Clara will lead it. No more favoritism, no more illusions. This is my final choice." The applause grew louder, a rushing torrent. I stood tall and took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I was no longer a shadow, no longer the useless daughter in my family's eyes. I was myself. As the applause spread through the hall, I stood there, feeling each wave of sound crash and wash away all the years I had been buried in silence. My parents had left, leaving a heavy void, and Daniel was frozen, his hand bleeding from the glass shards. But I was no longer afraid of his gaze. My grandfather placed his frail but steady hand on my shoulder, his voice resonating through the microphone. From tonight, the Vale family changes. Clara will lead the company. She knows what it's like to be looked down on, so she will never look down on anyone. She learned strength from silence, and now it is time for her to speak. The crowd stood and applauded heartily. A few guests came over to shake my hand, no longer with pity in their eyes, but with respect. I caught a glimpse of the mysterious man who had handed me the envelope earlier, standing at the back of the hall. He simply gave a slight nod and disappeared into the crowd. I knew that he was the one who had bridged the gap to reveal this truth. When the party ended, I stepped outside. The New York night was bathed in the warm orange glow of streetlights, the skyscrapers sparkling like a starlit sky. For so many years, I had seen these lights as a distant world, a place that belonged only to my brother, while I remained on the sidelines. But now, they shone brightly, like a promise meant just for me. I looked up and took a long breath. I remembered the mocking dinner conversations, my mother's whispers that a daughter should only get married, and the condescending sneers of my father and brother. All those knife wounds had forged me into steel. And now, as the door opened, I stepped out of the cage they had trapped me in my whole life. My grandfather walked out with me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, his voice low and warm. "Do you see it now?" I nodded, my eyes fixed on the city lights. "Yes, I see it clearly now." He smiled, the lights reflecting in his old but resolute eyes. "Then hold it firmly. This future is yours." The night wind blew, sweeping away the fear and the years of being looked down upon. I was no longer the useless daughter. I was Clara Vale, the chosen one, not because I was a son or a daughter, but because I was strong enough to rise after everything. And I knew that my story wasn't just for me. It was a message to all who have ever been called inadequate, all who have ever been pushed to the sidelines. Your worth is not in their prejudices. One day, the truth will speak louder than all the contemptuous words. And when that moment comes, stand up.